The story begins with Ichika remembering how she met Ryou. One rainy day, he was leaving the house of one of the women he spent the night with while Ichika was going to school. As he didn't have any breakfast at the woman's house, he started to feel dizzy at the train station and almost falls down the stairs, but the schoolgirl caught him with her umbrella and ended up giving him her lunch before running to school. Once at work, Ryou thinks about tossing the lunchbox to the garbage, but he remembers the worried face of the girl and decides to try it anyways, thinking that the girl's uniform is similar to his sister's. Later that night, when he goes back home, his sister, Ryou, has a friend over who turns out to be the girl that saved his life. When the blonde girl goes to attend her mother's phone call, he starts asking the girl what he could do to compensate her and offers her a kiss, daring to suggest even more. This makes Ichika call him a creepy man, thing that kind of startles Ryou. However, this immediately makes the man fall in love with her, so he kneels in front of her, proclaiming that they were destined to be together. Throughout the next days, he has been using his sister to send the girl expensive gifts, but she got tired of it and ended up giving him her friend's address, so he sent her a rose, making Ichika have to explain to her mother who he was. Tired of it, she confronts Ryou about it, but the girl has no problem with them both dating, as it'd be amusing for her and her brother is a fairly good suitor, although she thinks he's a scumbag. The blonde girl suggests that if she doesn't like him, she can as well call him to tell him to stop it and gives her his number, suggesting she call at night as he might be working during the day. She calls him that night and he immediately lights up, asking if she liked the rose and other gifts. She struggles to tell him to stop, but he makes it quick by asking if he's bothered her. Although she doesn't want to hurt his feelings, she ends up saying that it bothers her, but this won't stop him and he makes very clear that he'll continue to give her things that will make her happy regardless, so she's entitled to scream out curse him. On the weekend, Ichika goes to do groceries, but she encounters Ryou on the way who ends up following her, waiting for her to curse him. However, she realizes that she can only buy one set of eggs due to a one package per person rule, so she asks him to buy another one with her. She worries that it might upset him, but he's delighted to be doing groceries with her like they are a married couple. They have an oddly enjoyable shopping spree in the end. Once out of the store, he insists on carrying the bags and so does she, but he holds up the bag, saying that he'll give it to her if he can give her a kiss. She ends up giving up and lets him carry the bag, saying that he might have experience with girl, but he tells her that he's doing it because he likes her, which makes her say that he's disgusting again. Once back at home, her mother informs her that she got another flower. The woman points out that it's very romantic that he sends one flower every day as her name means one flower. Some days later, while killing some times between meetings, Ryou finds Ichika in a cafeteria and decides to sit with her. It turns out that she's waiting for Ryou, but when the blonde girl sees them from the entrance, she texts her brother that she'll give them 10 minutes and leaves. It turns out that the girls have upcoming exam and she's having problems with maths and science. She kindly explains to her what she has to do, making her light up. He explains to her that he wasn't as good in arts, so she asks him to draw her. While he was in the middle of his ranting about her beauty and his lack of skills, one of the women he used to sleep with appears and starts a conversation with him, although he can't remember her name, so he remains silent. The woman notices Ichika and advises her not to fall for the man, as he's a womanizer. Ryou tries to stop her, but the high school girl shuts her up, saying that although he is a womanizer, he's not bad with her and leaves. Once the girl leaves, Ryou grabs a napkin and rubs the woman's makeup, threatening her not to do that ever again. He runs after the girl and explains that that woman is not his girlfriend, and that what she said made him happy, although the nice atmosphere is ruined by the man simping over the girl. Some days later, while Ryou goes back home from work, he finds Ichika welcoming him and baking. Although at first he thinks that he has started hallucinating, Ryou quickly explains to him that them and other two girls are practicing for the school's festival, as they'll set up a cafe. The other two girls have already fallen for the man, and when all four of them are in the blonde girl's room, they start asking her questions about him, letting us know that he's 10 years older than her. One of the girls asks why do they act along so well, as she has siblings, but they are always fighting, and Ryou explains that they didn't get along before. We see in a flashback that he used to be a troublemaker, and he'd get in terrible discussions with their father, but since he fell in love with her friend, they have been talking more and spending more time together. At that moment, he knocks on the door to bring them some coffee. Each mug has different ladder art, and he instructs his little sister to give her friend one that says that he loves her, making her have to stride it up fast before anyone sees it. After the girls leave the house, he thanks his sister for helping him with the girl, and they do the dishes together. However, she warns him not to hurt her friend or she'll stop supporting him with all of that, something that he's looking forward to. Some days later, Ryou meets up with an old friend from school, Masuda, and tells him about his crush on the girl, surprising him as his friend has never asked someone out. He quickly realizes that Ryou is a total masochist for this girl, making him realize that he has never felt that way before for anyone, so she might have just awakes it on him. In between the drunken courage, Masuda manages to get his friend's phone and calls Ichika, but it's 1 a.m. and the girl just scolds him for calling so late. However, this only makes the man laugh and reassure his friend that he'll be cheering for him. The day of the festival arrives and the two men go to see the girls at the cafe, brushing off some disgusting guy in the way. Upon meeting, Ichika scolds Ryou for talking to his friend about her, and he's about to tell her he loves her again, but she stuffs his mouth with a pastry before anyone could listen to him. Ryou joins them and plays as if she didn't remember Masuda, but asks her friend to show her brother around the festival as she can't leave yet, and makes the other man to stay as well, setting up some alone time for the developing couple. When they leave, he asks her about the couple, and she explains that her friend is just a normal girl, but she is special for her brother, which makes them smile. Meanwhile, with the other two, the girl is trying to set boundaries for no one to suspect anything of them, but they are stopped by one of the kids asking Ryou to play their game in order to win food vouchers. He accepts and hits only one spot, but encourages Ichika to try despite her saying that she's bad at sports. And she wasn't lying. As soon as she throws the ball, it hit a boy in the head, the ceiling, and then the target, making Ryou try and fail to hide his laugh. She starts walking again, ashamed, and tells him to go get something to eat with the vouchers, but she twists her ankle on the stairs and is caught by him. He looks at her from above, thanks to the position they ended up in, and hugs her tight, but she slaps him. She's ashamed and worried about someone seeing them. He explains that he's happy because this time he was able to save her. Sadly, the cute moment is ruined by Ichika's belly growling. He walks her to an empty classroom, telling her to wait while he goes to buy the food, as he doesn't want her to trip over again because she's not used to walk in a kimono. Willing to sit down in the empty classroom, allowing herself to think about Ryou's cologne once she's alone, blushing from the memory. Some days later at PE, some guys are talking about the cute girls of the class. They mention Ryou and her brother, so they ask their friend Tamaru. Although he doesn't seem interested on it, he remembers seeing Ryou and Ichika hug, and when he's asking about the man, the girl accidentally hits him with a volleyball ball on the forehead. Later at the classroom, she approaches him again to apologize. She notices that he's reading the same manga she's following and immediately starts talking about it and explaining that she only has the volumes up till the third. He tells her that he has them all and is willing to let her borrow them, thing that makes her terribly happy. Ryou sees it in the distance and doesn't look very pleased by the interaction. Later that night, Ichika was walking home by herself when Ryou calls her, as he calls her every day at the same hour. He realizes that she's out alone, and once she tells him that she's nearby, he asks her to wait for him and runs to where she's. He points out that she must have answered his call quickly, as she usually takes her time to it, because she was afraid to be alone at night, but she denies it. At that moment, they encounter Tamaru as he leaves around the corner of the store they've been standing outside of. They introduce to each other, and the boy recognizes him as Ryou's brother. He mentions that he'll bring Ichika the mangas she wanted the next day, making the girl smile and the man jealous. He says goodbye, heading to the store, but Ryou stops him and asks him, just as he did for his sister, to keep getting along with the girl as classmate, making the emphasis on the last word. They leave as if nothing had happened, but after that, Tamaru squats on the flute, accepting that the man has intimidated him. While they walk home, she gives Ryou a can of black coffee, as she remembered that that's what he was drinking at the cafe. This makes him incredibly happy and also remembers what she was drinking that day and the equations she was solving. As she mentions that he has a great memory, he makes a mental note about asking Ryou about Tamaru. The next day, as the boy gives Ichika the book she asked for, he asks if she's going out with her friend's older brother. She denies it, and he explains to her that he saw them at the staircase, so she explains that he was only helping her. However, the boy tells her to be cautious because it seemed to him that the man was messing with her. Later that day, she visits the siblings due to the exams. Ryou tries to help her, but the girl insists on Ryou helping her. Unfortunately for her, the girl gets a call and has to leave the room. Now alone, both are a bit startled about being alone in a bedroom, but the man quickly makes conversation asking what does she think about Tamaru. She explains that the girls from her class say he's handsome and she thinks that he might be, although she hasn't paid that much attention. He then asks what does she think of him, and she simply says that he's well put on the outside, making him laugh and tell her that she's the most beautiful person he's seen. However, the boy's words resonate in her mind and she ends up asking why does he say those things. As to her, it seems like he's messing with her. Ryou enters the room again and her brother leaves, seemingly hurt, so Ichika tells her friend that she said something very mean to him. The days go by and things are uncomfortable between them, but they keep talking as usual. One day, Ichika gets a cold and tells her friend that she won't be able to hang out. She tells her brother and allows him to go visit her alone, hoping that some alone time would help them to get over the problem. When he arrives to her house, she's surprised to see him there, as she thought that Ryou would have gone to see her. However, her mother lets him in, knowing that he's the one who had given her all the gifts. She bought too much food and even seeing her sick, he still tells her that he loves her, more worried about her health than anything. He also gives her a study guide that he made for her, which makes her happy and makes her laugh because it's pretty handmade. She apologizes for the mean things she said, and he explains that he wasn't upset about it, but he asks if her apologies mean that she's finally accepted his feelings, which makes her start complaining again. In the end, she ends up falling asleep, and he caresses her face, internally thanking her for apologizing. The day of the exam, Ichika glares as hers, conflicted about the fact that she got an excellent grade thanks to Ryou's study guide, but her friend brushes it off saying that it's a good thing and she should be happy. In the end, she smiles, thinking about how to thank him. Some days later, the four friends are talking about school when Satsuki mentions that the year is ending and she wants excitement in her life, which Ryou translates to a boyfriend. So the girls start saying what their types are, and when it's Ichika's turn, she makes sure to enlist all of the opposite things that Ryou is, which makes the blonde girl smile. Suki mentions that the person that she described fits Tamaru, who's casually trying to take a nap in his desk next to them. Ryou looks at him for a moment, seeming worried, and explains that her type are sumo wrestlers. Meanwhile at work, one of Ryou's co-workers looks at him cautiously, feeling that something has changed with him. She then goes to lunch to gossip with her friends as he's a well-known womanizer, and she heard him on a call with Ichika, telling her that he loves her. However, she thinks that he's dating an older woman who's a teacher, but that doesn't stop the three women from smiling giddily at the thought. At the end of classes, Ichika is taking a couple of easels to the storage room, but she's struggling to take them downstairs, so Tamaru steps up to help her. They make a casual conversation about their clubs, as she's in the art club and he's in the literature one. Once things are settled, he asks her about when they met outside the convenience store and asks if it was a coincidence that Ryou was there as well. He ends up asking after she clarifies that they are not dating. What does she think about him? But she ends up glaring, thinking about all the things that she dislikes about him. This gets the boy nervous and he leaves, upset with himself about even asking. On his way out of the school, he comes across Ryou and she asks him if he was with her friend, as they seem to be closer now. He then takes the chance to ask about the couple, and she explains that her brother is crushing on her friend, which also makes her ask if he likes Ichika, because if that's the case, she then would have to warn him about her brother's insane and reckless attitudes. After she leaves, Tamaru starts seriously asking himself what does he feel for the girl. Some days later, Ichika and Ryou meet at a cafe, and the girl asks her friend what could she gift Ryou, as she wants to thank him for taking care of her, and with Christmas around the corner, so they go shopping. That same night, her brother enters her room to ask what to gift the girl, as all the previous gift, thought honest, were more to his own satisfaction of seeing the girl's reactions, and he wants to give her something that'd make her happy, just as Tamaru's book. She quickly sends him a list of gifts to pick, happy to see that their relationship is evolving. Meanwhile, the couple wonders, each by their own, what to gift the blonde girl. Christmas Eve night arrives and Ryou is able to finish work relatively early, so some co-workers invite him to go drink with them, and although he has a gift to give, he starts accepting. Of course, that's until Ichika texts him, asking to meet up. They meet at the street in front of a huge decorated tree, and she explains that his sister was with her until she texted him. Not really knowing how to, she simply puts her gift in front of his face, thanking him for the care and the study guide, wishing him a happy Christmas. He carefully unwraps the gift, finding a tie clip that he happily puts on, even mentioning that he'll be putting it in an altar when he gets home. Ryou also hands her gift, explaining that it's a really special one. When she opens it, she finds a special Blu-ray copy of the anime she's watching with a special keychain of her favorite character, which makes her cry of happiness. They start walking, asking each other how did they know what to get each other. When they come to the realization that Ryou is the one that manipulated the threads to get them both to be happy with their gifts, they decide to go buy some cake and have a Christmas party with the girl, who kindly receives them and cooks for them. The day of the annual trip arrives and the school hired some photographers to capture the students' moment during their vacations. It was a surprise for the girl to see Masuda as one of them, but they let it pass. Already at their destination, he takes pictures of them without warning, making Ryou upset, as they have the right to decline pictures at every moment. However, Ichika tries to calm them down by chatting, as her friend was about to break the man's camera. The blonde girl asks if he told her brother he'll be coming, and he explains that he didn't, as he'd have asked him to take a load of pictures of Ichika. When he's called to take pictures of other students, the girls decide to take a selfie, one that of course Ryou sends to her brother. Ryou is happy about the picture, but worried about the girl spending time alone with Tamaru away from him. He's so lost in the thought that he bumps into a co-worker, Matsushima Eri. She accidentally drops a keychain of the same anime that Ichika likes, the exact same one that he gifted the girl. The woman tries to fake like it isn't hers, but he sees nothing bad about liking anime and even comments on the character's action on one of the episodes. However, she asks for him to keep it private and he agrees, asking her to hit him up whenever she wants to talk about it, as he wants more things to be able to share with his crush. Thanks to this, Eri's image of him starts changing. In a visit to the aquarium, Ichika gets lost from her group and bumps into Tamaru, so they stay together for a while, as her phone died and she has no way of contacting the girls. Although he's with the group, they quickly abandon him when they see him with the girl, so they stay together and look at some fishes. He reaches out to grab her hand, but Masuda interrupts taking pictures. She asks for his phone to contact Ryou as he has her information, and the man asks the boy if they interrupted, now knowing who his best friend was so worried about. Later that night, the girls are wondering what to do with their free time the next day when Ryou calls the girl. Seeing her reaction, the blonde girl tells her to take the call at the hallway, and she has no choice but to do so. The man asks if Masuda is with her, because he was bragging about it earlier, and she confirms it, making the man jealous. However, he tells her that he misses her voice, and that's why he called. Moved by that, she ends up accepting that having his friend and sister here, but not him, makes her miss him a little. After they end the call, Tamaru, who was hidden listening because he came across that situation and was curious, tries to hide properly but ends up hitting his elbow and she notices him. They go together to buy drinks and she explains what she and her friends were talking about, so he ends up asking her to hang out with him on her free time. He takes her to pilgrimaging as the place where their favorite animes movie take place. After asking her friends, the girl let her go excited for her to hang out with a boy, but Ryou doesn't seem as pleased. After all, she's also worried as a little sister. At some point, he asks the girl to wait up while he buys them some drinks. When he comes back, he sees her talking to a guy and rushes to grab her, but he realizes it's just Masuda, which eases him so much that he ends up slipping that he reacted like that because he thought that someone was hitting on the girl. On the airport, Ichika asks Ryou if her brother likes sweets, as she ended up getting some for him. This eases the blonde girl and she tells her that her brother would love anything she gets him. Back at home, she meets with the man to give him his gift at a cinema. He's trying to get them to spend some time together, but the girl turns to leave and he reaches for her arm, reminding her about how Tamaru did the same. She ends up agreeing to watch a movie, but she asks him to pick it, as although he knows everything about her, she doesn't know much about him. When he goes to buy them popcorn and drinks, she starts comparing both guys and feels terrible about it. The feeling gets worse when inside of the cinema, Ryou changes seats with her. Because there were guys nearby, he even brought a blanket for her in case she feels cold, all things someone with experience in dating would do. The movie, which is about some love triangle, makes both of them worry and consider their situation. Ryou wants to know what happened at the trip, as Masuda told him he saw her and Tamaru together, but knows he can't directly ask her. In the end, she's really pensive and he tells her he'll take her home because she seems not to be awk. She then notices that he's not looking awk either, but he denies it. Going out of a meeting, Eri goes to have a cough and comes across Ryou in the cafeteria. She tries to fix her hair and make up, but when she reaches him, he points out that she still has some dead leaves in her coat, which upsets her because she seems to want to impress him a little. He offers the seat next to him and they chat for a moment, but he's too focused on his laptop. It turns out that he was looking for an anime of the upcoming season to talk about with Ichika, and as they seem to have similar tastes, she might help him. The woman helps him a little, pointing out the animes that she'd like to see. She really wants to ask about the rumor of his girlfriend but can't come up with it. Her phone rings, taking her chance to ask, and it's a message from some coworkers to grab some drinks the next Friday. Seeing that Ryou is taking his leave, she invites him, hoping that there she will be able to ask about it. Some days later, Ichika invites Ryou to a sleepover, and being the responsible big brother he is, Ryou insists on taking her in his car, taking the chance to buy some flowers and dessert for Ichika's mother. The woman tries to invite him in for some tea, but he has work to do, so her daughter rushes the woman's in. It upsets him, not because of her reaction, but because he thinks he's too coward in the way he's acting in his attempts of asking about the school trip. At the house, the girls start helping with dinner and Ryou opens up about her family. As we already know, her father and Ryou don't get along, and it's something that has affected her since she was very little, but she never let it show. She tells mother and daughter that her brother has in fact a flat of his own, but that since he meets Ichika, he stops by way more often. The night goes by with the dinner and Yuriko, Ichika's mother, comparing the two girls, as the blonde girl is very talented, even having to cook for herself at a young age due to her parents working most of the time, while her own daughter has always been very clumsy. Some days later, Ichika and Ruri have time in between a sports tournament to go see their friends, so they decide to go see the soccer match as their group is in the semifinals. It turns out that Tamaru is playing in the team, so when one of his friends informs him that the girl has come to see the match, he gets happy. However, he tells his friend not to say anything because he hasn't told her about his feelings. The match starts and Tamaru is giving his bets at the field, making a lot of girls notice how athletic and good he looks. All the girls watching the match compliment her because they think she and the boy are dating. Ichika can only think about Ryou, asking herself if he'd be good at sports as well. The tournament ends better for some than others, but everything goes pretty well for the kids. Meanwhile, the Friday arrives and halfway through the night, Eri still hasn't got the chance to ask about the man's girlfriend. In a pause to go to the bathroom, the only other girl there comes to see if she's alright, as they were thinking about leaving and she can't help but to ask for her help. The woman decides to take the last two other men to the karaoke and asks Ryou to accompany Eri to keep drinking. He accepts and they end up in a bar chatting over their drinks. With some more alcohol in her system, she finally gathers the courage to ask him about his girlfriend, which he explains that the rumor is fake, but as no one came to him to confirm it, he didn't say anything about it. The woman's hopes raise up, but the man explains that even if he's got a crush in someone, she's smart enough to connect his interest in anime with his crush, and they chat a bit about it. However, she won't let that let her down, as technically she still has a chance. So she asks if it's an unrequited love from his side, and he nods. Ryou accompanies her to the train station, and the girl looks more encouraged to get her chance with him, but she leaves without making a move on him. In the train back home, she searches how to attract a man that's in love with someone else, and on his side, Ryou calls Ichika, as the talk about his unrequited love led him missing her voice. During the day of the release of the last volume of the anime him and Ichika like Tamaru goes to a bookshop to get it, with such bad luck that Ryou is in the same bookshop. He tries to avoid him but feels really stupid about it. He's way too focused on his plan, so he didn't notice the man reaching for the same book until their hands touch. They play it off calmly, and the man acts even kindy and smiley to him. However, over the small talk, Ryou points out that they have similar tastes, including women, thing that he doesn't deny but rather pseudo-confesses to him. He quickly leaves to pay, having all his energy drained on that talk, and the man is left behind, glaring at him, reckoning that he has some guts to tell him that. In another bookshop, Eri goes for the same book, but stays watching the commercial for the anime and gasps when her fave appears on screen. She's shocked because another girl reacts the same way as her and they end up staring at each other. The girl turns out to be Ichika, and they quickly bond over their love for their fave, having a wholesome moment both unaware of what they represent in Ryou's life. Once he arrives home, the blonde man finds his mother talking to his sister. He is calm until the woman tells them that she talked to their father and he might be coming home soon, thing that makes him hide in his room and worries the blonde girl. Halfway through the manga, he decides to call his crush, who has already finished the book and was just soaking on it. She tells him about the encounter she had, and he comments that he had an encounter as well, although he doesn't mention that it was Tamaru who he met. However, he reminds the girl that soon it'll be Valentine's Day and tells her that he'll be waiting for a gift. So the next following days, he calls her every day making a countdown. At school, Ichika is worried, thinking what to give him, although she points out that she's doing it because he has been pestering her more than anything. She asks Ryou what to get to her brother, but the girl reminds her that he'll like anything that comes from her, although this isn't enough for the girl, as she wants to give him something that would make him truly happy. The blonde girl realizes that this is an important moment, so she lets her figure it out on her own, not offering her help this time. Going out of the school, Ichika is stoked by Masuda. The man invites her to have something to eat and tells her that he'll be taking the pictures of the graduation ceremony, but asks her not to tell Ryou about either their encounter and the event. He notices that she's worried about something, and upon watching a poster of Valentine's offer, he figures out that the girl is struggling about what to get to his friend. So he advises her not to give him chocolates, as when they were younger, Ryou would get many chocolates from girls, but once he ate one with a lump of hair inside of it and refused to accept any chocolate from then on, seemingly forming a trauma out of it. Curious, the girl asks about the man back in high school, and the photographer tells her that he was rather reserved, not wanting to take part on the groupal activities, which earned many disgusted looks from their classmates. However, on a recently graduated meeting, he was more kind and talkative with their former classmates, so Masuda thinks he has changed thanks to her. Although she thanks him for his insight, this doesn't really help her much, and once she's at home, she fries her brain trying to think about what to get him, getting to the conclusion that maybe an action would be enough. This thought embarrasses her, but she doesn't have much time to pity herself because Ryou calls her. He's in the middle of his countdown when she asks him to wait for her on the 14th before going to work, as she'll stop by to give him something, which leaves him pretty startled. Valentine's Day finally arrives, and by the day, Ryou is waiting kneeling in front of the door. Ichika arrives and explains that she's there to give him his gift, but he's surprised when she explains that she won't be giving him any chocolate. To his greater surprise, she runs at him and hugs him, quickly leaving afterwards. Ryou pops out noticing that the girl has already left, but she finds her brother laying on the floor, utterly happy about his gift. At school, our protagonist gives her friend chocolates and texts Tamaru, asking her to meet with her at lunch. Once alone, she gives him his gift, but the boy is quick to confess his feelings, telling her that he'd have rather to get something special for him instead of something out of obligation, so he asks her to think about going out with him. Meanwhile, at work, Eri has bought chocolated for Ryou, but at lunch she finds out that he doesn't accept chocolates, that she's determined to give him his gift, even if she ends up being rejected. Sadly for her, she doesn't find the time to talk to him in the middle of her busy day, so she goes to the train station feeling defeated. There, she gets a glimpse of the man and runs to him. She gives him the present, explaining that she didn't have the time to change her gift and fully expecting to be rejected. However, he kindly accepts the gift and leaves, leaving the woman with renewed hopes. The next day, her friend starts acting weird, so Ryou decides to go face Tamaru and ask him. He doesn't deny the situation, and she complains about him lying to her when she asked about his feelings, so he explains that they weren't clear at the time, but anyway it should matter to her, as whatever that Ichika decides is not her problem. He ends up telling her that he thinks that she's lonely, and that's why she worries for her friend so much. Ryou lets his words sink in, but decides to brush it off, joking about him being her brother's new rival, thing that he accepts to her. During the night, Ichika gets lost in her thought while talking to Ryou, making him worry. She's way too confused about everything that has happened. The next day, the man waits for her outside the school, wanting to check up on her, as he noticed her mood throughout their calls. She's confused and worried, not wanting to accept that maybe she can't correspond Tamaru's feelings, although she seems to like him because she has already caught feelings for her best friend's brother. He pushes, trying to know what's wrong with her, and the girl snaps, saying that it's not up to him, so he should get the hint that she doesn't want to discuss it with him. However, he calmly explains that he wants her problems to be his. He wants to help her and ease her because he loves her. She gives up and allows him to accompany her. In the way, she keeps thinking about her feelings and how, despite the man being selfish, one-sided and relentless, his face keeps popping out when she thinks about love. So she takes the decision to be honest with Tamaru, as she feels she owes it to him because he was capable of confronting her with his feeling looking at her in the eyes. Ichika arranges a meeting with Tamaru during the weekend to reject him, but when they finally meet up, she's so nervous that she wants to spill her feelings out right there. He eases her and takes her to the park to have some ice cream. Once there, she's honest with him and tells him that there is someone else she likes and therefore she cannot correspond his feelings, but she hates to lose him as a friend as well. He understands and tells her that being friends is better than her avoiding him. So he asks her if he's still in love with her while he sorts his feelings out. He walks her to the station and they chat normally, trying not to allow things to get awkward between them. There, they come across Ryou, who is surprised by seeing them together and immediately asks if they are on a date. Tamaru takes the guts to tell him that the girl has rejected him and that he expects him not to do anything that would make Ichika sad. After that, he leaves, letting them some alone time. The man is really excited at first, but then he realizes that the girl's mood has been bothering him because he knew she wasn't worried because of him, which makes him feel bad. What seems to be some days later, the teacher asks Tamaru, Ichika, and Ryou to write on the board some good message for the students that will graduate the next day in exchange of free drinks. The kids don't have much option but to accept, but while doing so, the blonde girl and the guy start fighting about the size of the font. Ichika tries to ease them, but her friend strikes saying that she has noticed that they've been acting strange lately and trying to avoid each other. Tired of the uncomfortable situation, the boy explains to the girl what has happened and how her friend rejected him. She tells Ryou that she didn't tell her what happened because she felt like she needed to sort things out on her own, which seems to be enough for the blonde girl. Then Ruri and Satsuki find them and offer their help with the board, easing the tension between the three other ones. In the end, they make a beautiful drawing on the board and the teacher buys them all drinks. Some days later, Ryou and Ichika meet up at a cafeteria for him to show her his presentation about what to get her for White Day. This makes the girl think even deeper about her feelings, knowing that she can't help but to think about him when she thinks about love, but very peeved and concerned about his stalker traits. She gets so deep in the thought the man has to cup her face in his hands to call her attention, which ashames her and makes her stand up to get some water. Then he receives a message from Eri inviting him to go for a drink, which he accepts thinking that they'll be going in a group. He is surprised later that evening when it's only the two of them at the bar, but goes along with it. After getting some motivation in front of the mirror, the woman takes the courage to confess her feelings for him. After getting it out of her chest, she asks about Ryou's crush, as she wants to know what does he like about her so she can implement it. He's confused about it, but ends up telling her the story and who the girl is, which makes the woman worry, as the age gap would make it difficult for them to be happy together, and she wouldn't want the person who she loves to suffer. So with a pained expression on her face, she holds his hand, asking why he couldn't fall in love with her instead. Eri tells him how unfair it is from him to accept her chocolates, be nice to her, just to reject her. But she apologizes for lecturing him and tells him that she won't give up as easily. On his way home, Ryou starts considering his feelings for Ichika and how they'd make her suffer thanks to the age gap. He ends up in his flat, still circling about his feelings when Ryou texts him, saying that their father would be home the next day. However, the following days at work, Eri treats him casually, almost as if she never confessed, just to then spiral into despair thinking if what she said was the correct thing to say. Meanwhile, Ryou invites Masuda to his apartment and tells him that his father would be at the house, so he'd be staying there for a while. He also tells him about the situation with Eri and Ichika and how he thinks that it might be better for the both of them to be with people of their age. His friend doesn't take it lightly, quite upset about the fact that he's about to make a stupid and selfish decision, going back to how he was when they were younger. Giving him possibly the best advice when it comes to love, he tells him that he needs to be prepared to be hurt, which resonates in him. Some days later, he takes Ichika to his sweets buffet for White Day. Once at the shop, he stops her from getting stained with the chocolate fountain, pointing out that her outfit is too cute to be ruined. Here we learn that she bought a fashion magazine to know what to wear, clearly making an effort for him. They notice that the place also sells meals, and she's surprised that it's his first time in a place like this, slipping the fact that she thought that he'd have already taken another girl there. He jokes saying that she might be jealous, but when the girl takes it seriously, she panics and rushes him to their table. There, they come across three of Ryou's co-workers as they are there celebrating the birthday of one of them. One of the women notices the girl and immediately mistakes her for his little sister, thing that Ichika actually admits being driven by the panic. When they leave them alone, she apologizes for lying, but she thought that it might be better for him if they didn't know who she really is. However, he's sad because he wanted to introduce her as her crush. So, not wanting him to be upset, she feeds him some cake, hoping he'd be happy about it. After eating, he takes her to look at the sea and asks if she enjoyed the day, but the girl thinks that he's only fishing for compliments. Thing is, he's still worried about her having to lie just to be with him, so he takes her hand and asking if they still look like siblings, leans to kiss her, but she covers him mouth with her hand. Completely panicking about what was about to happen, she says that he's awful, and he sadly agrees. Later at the train station, he texts Eri to take her to eat and treat her for White Day in a compensation for Valentine's and because he needs to talk to her. When they are there, he asks for her to stop trying to make him fall for her, as his crush is the only one for him and it wouldn't be awkward to make her wait for him. She understands and accepts to give up, realizing that she started to like him recently because of the impact his crush had on him, so it was a lost battle from the start. When they part ways, Eri cries as she eats the cookies Ryou gave her, and he decides for the first night not to call Ichika. The girls go out during their spring break and start discussion on their choices for careers, but Ichika has not yet chose anything, so she asks her friends to tell her what they're going to do to get some ideas. Satsuki will go to be a PE teacher. Ruri will choose a fashion school and Ryou wants to be a lawyer, but yet our protagonist is not sure about what to do, so she asks about how Ryou chose his career, but the blonde girl was really young and doesn't remember. Sometime later, she was to meet up with Tamaru at a coffee shop so he can give her her White Day gift. She takes the chance to ask him as well what is he going to do, and he tells her that he'll be going to a liberal arts school, something that she also thought of since she likes arts. Both of them are not very sure about what they want to do with their lives, so the boy thinks that it could help her if she asks someone older, as they've already been through the struggle. So that night she calls Ryou and he thinks that she should choose something that accommodates to something she likes, and as she likes arts, he suggests an art school. But she explains that she likes more to look at the art rather than produce it. Then the man gets an idea and suggests her to be a curator, something that fits in more with her. Wanting to have more options, she asks how he chose his career and he tells her that he went along with what his parents planned for him, so he isn't the best example for her. So the next day, she goes to the library straight to look for curator books, and while going back home, she comes across an art gallery banner. Meanwhile, Ryou and Ryou are having dinner with their parents. Their father only asks his son if he's going to stay the night, but after he refuses, he doesn't speak again. While the two women do the dishes, they start talking about Ichika and how she changes Ryou as the blonde girl has told their mother about it. Then, by accident, their father overhears the conversation and goes to face his son, who was just leaving. He accuses him of laying hands on his little sister's friend and demands he starts acting like an adult. The blonde man is upset and yells at him for attacking him without even asking how things were. Meanwhile, Ryou sadly listens to them from the kitchen. Later that night, she calls her brother apologizing, but he eases her, explaining that it wasn't her fault as due to his previous behavior with women, it's normal that their father would have reacted like that. She accepts it and asks what should she say when asked about the situation between him and her fiend, but he tells her to tell the truth as he won't be lying about the girl he loves. Sometime later, Ichika goes to pick up Ryou from her house to go out, and in a moment when she's alone, her father appears and asks her if his son has been bothering her. But she denies it and says that he has been helping her a lot. When she comes back, the blonde girl worries, but her friend eases her and they leave. Already at the cafe, Ryou receives a text from Masuda inviting her to go to watch the sakura trees, as his ex-classmates have canceled on him and Ryou. She asks her friend if she'd like to go with her, and once she accepts, she finally tells her that her brother will be there. But Ichika notices that the blonde man has been a bit gloomy lately, and not being so excitable as always. She shares the food her mother prepared for them, and upon giving the man a plate, their hands touch, making her squirm away shilly. After the food, Masuda stands up to go buy more beer, and taking the chance, Ryou accompanies him to leave the couple some alone time. The man tries to make the situation as less uncomfortable as possible, and she tells him that she's going to go for the curator school, so she'll need his help studying. This makes him happy and he promises to make her more study guides. Ryou mentions that it has been long since he has gone out to watch the flowers in such a calm environment, as the last time he went with his family, Ryou still was in a stroller. It was a rainy day, but their father bought him a lottery ticket and made him happy. Ichika remembers that her friend said that they weren't close, and he tells her about the conversation they had the other night. He apologizes for boring her, but she thanks him for telling her something about him she didn't know. Suddenly, a flower petal falls in the girl's hair and he reaches to take it out. She looks at him and is about to confess her feelings, but they are interrupted by the other two who had come back. Ryou was a little troubled, but the boast still makes him happy. School starts again and Ichika asks Ryou if her brother is in a business trip of sick, as he hasn't called her since the flower gazing day, so the blonde girl simply tells him to call them instead. She's a bit hesitant, so her friend confronts her asking if she likes him because it is unfair that it's her brother making all of the effort and her just being in the receiving end, so she asks her to make up her mind quickly. At home, Ichika talks to her mother as her father's birthday is close and asks what is the age gap between them. They are 5 years apart and the woman thinks it's mostly nothing, but the girl points out that at her age, 5 years is a lot. Her mother asks if she wants to be an adult soon, and she says that she might, but mostly wonders if he'd wait until she's an adult. The woman laughs and clarifies that she needs to make an effort, so he want to wait for her, as he's a good man that could get stolen from her. So she takes the courage to call him and invite him to a museum, but he rejects her as he'd be busy with work. She asks why he hasn't been contacting her later, and he explains that he has been busy with work and won't be able to talk even if she is the one who called. Days go by and they lose touch, which makes Ichika very distracted. One day, she encounters him at the train station, but he seems to be talking about work with a woman and decides to leave not to interrupt. At the same time, a girl that looks a lot like her passes by Ryou, distracting him, but he's disappointed to notice that's not his crush. Another day, Ichika goes out with Ryou, being so distracted by the man who has stopped calling her that she's blank most of the time. The blonde girl asks if she called her brother, and the girl explains that he's been busy. This is not normal, and the girl tries to text him to see what's going on, but Ichika asks her to stop meddling, being harsh and telling her it's not her problem what goes between them. The blonde girl apologizes for being annoying, as she only wanted to help because they weren't making any progress. Our protagonist realizes that she's screwed up, so she tells her friend that she really likes her brother, but she thinks that she's not suited for him, as there must be a nicer, older, smarter woman who's best for him. Ryou calls her bluff, saying that if they like each other, then it's enough. Besides, her brother never said she wanted someone else that wasn't her, and having the two most precious people for her dating would be beautiful, so she only needs more confidence in herself. The friends hug, and Ichika promises that she'll meet Ryou in person, and she'll tell him how she feels. Meanwhile, Ryou and Masuda meet at a bar. The blonde man looks defeated, and he tells his friend that he's thinking about backing up for good. He has noticed that Ichika might have feelings for him, and it got him scared, as he's not sure he's someone who can take care of her or if he wants to make her suffer. Masuda is really not having any of it and threatens to punch him, as if he backs off and now the girl would disappear for good. It's not fair for him to just leave after making the girl fall in love with him. So if he's afraid to hurt her, he just needs to work harder on himself. Sometime later, Ryou calls Ryou because he forgot a folder of the house. After she finds it, she's about to meddle again, but backs off, and he thanks her for being there whenever he needs it. When she comes out of the office, she encounters their father, and she asks for him to be there for her brother, but the man walks out without saying a word. Then she receives a text from her friend saying that she'll try to ask out her brother that day. After classes, Ichika sees Ryou at the distance in the same station that they met. She struggles for a moment, but decides not to run away from her feelings anymore, so she runs to him, losing him in the crowd for moments. Finally, she loses him and starts crying in the stairs, calling his name. He hears her and looks back, so she starts reaching for him, but she stumbles and he runs to her rescue. As soon as she's in his arms, she starts complaining about him disappearing, so he honestly tells her that he doesn't want to cause her troubles. Ichika is so upset that she slaps him, telling him that he doesn't get to decide how she feels, because it'd be harder for her now to be without him. She tells him that yes, he'd been a bother from the starts, creepy, and at the verge of committing crime, but somehow she ended up seeing that he was just messy and awkward, making her fall for him. Ryou is surprised, but he kisses her without a second though, saying that he loves her as well. After the little scene they pull together, he hugs her, and she asks for him to wait for her until she's an adult, and he promises that they can take all the time she needs together. Ryou goes to his parents' place to pick up something he needs, but before leaving, he tells his father that he'll wait for Ichika and he'll take care of her because he's precious for him, and he hopes that he'll understand him. After leaving, his father sighs, complaining about how stillborn his son is, but his wife reminds him that they are two alike.